Welcome to I Said What I Said, a sports podcast giving you opinions not heard anywhere else. I'm your host, Brad Wakai, alongside my co-host, Tyson Gentry. And Tyson, we're continuing our college football previews and picks little series that we're doing here. We've done the ACC, we've done the Pac-12, so go check those out if you're curious who we're betting, who we like this season. And make sure to stay tuned in this one as we will give out more bets during Money Makin Time as we kind of take you through everything in the Big 12. It's a very, very interesting year this year, as with anything related to conference realignment. We got 4 new teams coming in this conference, so there's going to be 14 teams in this conference this year. Oklahoma and Texas on their way out. Potentially some more new guys coming in next season with Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah. A lot of interesting things going on for the Big 12, who's been much maligned by you and me.
Yeah, well, they got us good last year. I keep forgetting the number. It was like 73, 74% or something that we hit on our season longs, the picks we give out. And the Big 12 was the only conference that whooped us last year. And it was, I think they whooped everybody. TCU came out of nowhere and just really blew everything up for us. But, we'll get into it, man. But we shit on the Big 12 like harder than any other conference, and I think I might watch more Big 12 than I do of like anybody outside of the Big 10 and the SEC, because the games are just fun. Like, you're sitting down to watch 50-45. Those are the final scores you're looking for when you watch these games.
Yeah, it's a very interesting year. We look at the top, like Texas are the prohibitive favorites. Oklahoma coming off a down year. Can they bounce back under Brent Venables? And then it's really a lot of people that the sports books, and they don't really know how to price, and people are kind of curious to see how they work. And obviously TCU was a representative of the Big 12 last year in the college football playoff, making it to the championship game. And the newcomers, like, how do they fit in? There's a lot going on, and we'll discuss them later in this podcast. But let's just jump right in to Texas, because like I said, they're the big favorites to win this conference. They have Quinn Ewers back, and apparently he's taken things a lot more seriously this year. He cut his mullet off. Whoa. Apparently his body looks great. Like, apparently he's in shape. Like, he kind of got rid of that baby fat that, he was kind of like walking around with. And, last year they underperformed going 8-5. Let's be honest, 6-3 in conference. Some of those were not good losses. And now they're back with major expectations on them, led by Quinn Ewers, who basically, if he doesn't perform well this year, Arch Manning's there right behind him waiting in the wings, but 19th in returning production. And they're third in the nation with 85% of their offense coming back. And defensively, that's where we have questions about Texas, and they're sitting there at 68th. So it could be worse, because 63% of that production last year is coming back. So there's big hype around this team, I think, with good reason.
Well, and we say they underperformed, but we also got to say they got bit by the injury bug a little harder than some of the other teams that were kind of preseason darlings, because it was a Hudson Card came in and had to play a lot of football when Quinn Ewers was out, and Hudson Card was fine. But when Quinn Ewers was rolling, especially early in that Alabama game, early in the season, it kind of was like, whoa, maybe Texas is back. Obviously, losing Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson is going to be kind of a big blow. But you mentioned that defense, Brad. They're returning 6 starters. Obviously, Overshown, the linebacker, DeMarvion, I think Overshown is out. But it was a defense that went from allowing 31 points a game 2 years ago to just only 21 last season, which is pretty good for a Texas football team, especially one where we were expecting kind of track meets up and down the field. The Big 12 didn't necessarily provide as many of those last season as in years past, but it's on Quinn Ewers' shoulders, because we know Xavier Worthy is going to be – he's an All-American. Like this, he's special. And so can you get that guy the football? Can you stay out in front of games, which I think that was one of Texas's bigger issues too, is it was like either they're winning and let somebody back into the game, or they're Rory McIlroy. They don't quite have the juice when it comes to chasing somebody down from behind. 8-5 was a bad mark. Everybody in the world is looking at Texas right now to win this division or conference and to win double-digit football games. And unfortunately, I think I'm there too. I'm not the biggest Sark guy in the world, but I don't think he's as bad of a coach as some people seem to kind of get on him for. But if Quinn Ewers, they'll go as Quinn Ewers goes. And if this is the guy that was so good that he was able to leave school early, collect a bag, and dip back out to Texas, we're getting to the point where this kid is like, oh, he's still in school. The guy's like 20 years old, 21 years old. He
Yeah.
just came in as a baby.
Yeah, and Sarkisian, you mentioned him. This is his third season. He's got a 13-12 record at Texas, so nothing that you're going to be like, wow. But turning it around to 8-5 last year, that helps. But Ewers, he's got to be better. 58.1% completion percentage, and a lot of that had to do with his injured shoulder that he suffered at
Also,
college.
just
I guess it
the
was.
gunslinging nature that he wants to play football.
Yeah, that's who he is, and you kind of played with the good with the bad. Because if he's healthy, they beat Alabama last year,
and the whole season changes.
And the whole narrative changes for sure. But, this year, Tyson, they got to go at Alabama, at Baylor, hosting Oklahoma. Now, that's in Dallas. So, it's a neutral. And they're hosting Kansas State, who people are liking. Their non-conference is Rice, Alabama, and Wyoming. So, it's very interesting. You got some okay schools. I mean, Wyoming's defense is going to be good. But at Alabama is the biggest litmus test of them all there. And they're going to have to be ready for that one. So, I think we mentioned that there's a lot to be proven by Quinn Ewers and Sarkisian this season if they want to be like getting this thing back on track. And I mean, let's face it. We know Texas isn't patient. If this doesn't go well for Sarkisian, you already got Arch Manning there. I'd be surprised if they wouldn't look for a replacement.
Nothing is more frustrating, and maybe Notre Dame fans, but like just the incessant nature that Texas deserves a seat at the table pisses me off.
Let's get to Oklahoma, because if we want to talk about how Texas was underperforming last year, Oklahoma was just ridiculously bad, going 6-7, 3-6 in conference. It was ugly under first-year head coach Brent Venables, who came over from Clemson as a longtime defensive coordinator. Now, Dylan Gabriel's back. I think he was like one of the lone bright spots for that offense last year. 3,168 yards, 62.7 completion percentage, 25 tuds, 6 picks, added 315 more yards on the ground with 6 more touchdowns. They got a lot returning on the offensive side of the ball, which I think helps because, let's face it, it wasn't very pretty on the defensive side last year, but the offense certainly didn't help them out when it came down to it. But 73% of their production's back, but defensively, there's a lot of transfers because, Venables just like, we got to get new players in here, but 52% back. We'll see if that helps or hurts what they want to do.
This was a defense that allowed 6 yards per snap in conference play. They were 0-5 in one-score football games. It didn't look like they were going to win a damn game until later in the year. And then all of a sudden, they kind of got things figured out. Marvin Mims being gone, I think, is actually a pretty big deal. I thought he was their best player to me last season. I thought he was really good. So we'll see how they replace him. But they have Barnes and Sawchuk in the backfield running the football. It just comes down to is Brent Venables as good as a defensive mind as we were led to believe when he was at Clemson? Because it's one thing when it's 5 stars along the entire defensive line. You got 3 of them in the secondary and 2 more playing linebacker for you. No other team in the country that was supposed to be in the top 5 was having open tryouts halfway through the year. I tell you that much. I'm not like the biggest believer in Oklahoma this year. I think part of what Venables had to do last year was really cleanse the culture and kind of set what he wanted. That's tough for me because it's not like he was walking into a dumpster fire. He was walking into a team with a bad defense year over year, but it was still a team that was like a perennial 10-win contender there. And so like maybe he's just harder to get along with. Maybe he's a little bit too rough around the edges for some of these kids, but he goes out and gets basically an entire new defense. He's got all the shiny toys that he wants. I'm not so sure that there's going to be, like you mentioned, what was it, 52% of returning production on defense?
Yep.
I don't know how many of those guys that are coming back are going to like guaranteed starter jobs at this point in the year. And it's going to be tough. Granted, it's Oklahoma. Like it's a brand. It's huge. Oklahoma football is they're massive, especially like you're in New York. I'm in Montana. We don't see it as much around here. Go to the South. Like go hang out in Dallas, and you're going to see a lot of Oklahoma sweatshirts when you're thinking you're going to run into a bunch of Texas fans. They're massive. People want to play for them. It's a program. It's a ton of NIL money. And if this dude can't figure this thing out, then maybe he's just a really good defensive coordinator.
Yeah, and that's fine, right? Like that happens a lot in the college football level. But
Absolutely.
I think if he's going to turn it around, he can do it quickly at Oklahoma.
Yep.
So I think, okay, this was my first year. A lot of people left to follow Lincoln Riley, or if they didn't go to USC, going their separate ways, whoever was communicating with throughout the recruitment process. And so it was a bad year last year, I think, with the talent level that Oklahoma normally has in that program. And so Venables hits the transfer portal. Let's bring in some guys. And it is Oklahoma. You're competing for your job every single year, no matter what, So
And
I'm
that
curious to
applies
see
to
what he
Jeff Lebby
does.
as well, offensive coordinator, because there were some times last year where it was like, oh, this guy might be in over his head.
Yeah, he's pretty good, though. I mean, he was good with Lane down at Ole Miss. I was actually surprised that he left. So
Eric Bieniemy was good with Andy Reid.
Yeah, true. That is true. But you mentioned Dallas. I mean, they're playing Texas and Dallas, Red River Shootout. So that's a big, hard game for them that they're going to have to measure up against because Texas is ready to go. If they can't figure out that defense, Tyson, they got to go to Kansas. I think that's one of the hardest games on the schedule because Kansas is going to be ready for that one. There's a lot of buzz. They also go to Oklahoma State. We all know how tough it is to play down there. And they host TCU. And we'll talk about TCU in a little bit, but man, that's going to be a tough place to play too. You go back to Dallas. And I think some toss-ups, honestly, UCF. I'm high on UCF this year. Again, we'll get into the newcomers. But I think, again, this is all prefaced on the fact that this defense may not be fixed. Because if it's not, oh boy. I mean, we could be seeing another leaky year for Oklahoma.
Shout out Alex Grinch.
Kansas State. Now, there's a lot of interest around these guys coming into the season. Last year, I just don't know how they continue to do it down in Little Manhattan, man. Like it's crazy. Like 10-4 again. We thought it was Bill Snyder. Okay, this guy Chris Kleeman comes in. He's been 30-20 in 5 seasons there, or in 4 seasons there. Like he's been unbelievable. They won the Big 12 last year. Like everybody's like, oh, TCU, great season. Kansas State beat them in the Big 12 championship. Yep. Like they were awesome. Now you do lose your do-it-all guy Deuce Vaughn, but Adrian Martinez, he's gone. Will Howard actually stepped in for him. They got better with him. He's back. In 7 games, he had 15 touchdowns. So, he can produce, and he's much better through the air. Offensively, they got 73% coming back. Overall, 63% of their production. Defensively is where you're going to have some questions. There's only 52% of that defense is back. But I believe I'm a Chris Kleiman guy, man. I think he's a great head coach.
And one of the things I love about him and his program and the way they play is it's completely different than other people in the Big 12. This is an offensive line that just wants to run you the fuck over and over and over again. And that's not common amongst the top teams in the Big 12. Cooper Beebe, offensive lineman there, like this he's a first-round pick. He's probably like a top 15 pick whenever he decides that it's his time to end his college career. It's a lot of production to replace amongst like big names. And obviously they lost like, was it 3 defensive backs that were starting last year, maybe 2 or 3. This is like turning into maybe a little bit of a plug and play show at Kansas State, which is fantastic. I really, really love watching these dudes play football. And like they got to replace Ozama, the defensive end last year, and he was really good. So we'll see how that goes. But there will always be a place for a bully in the Big 12. And Kansas State is going to fill that role with that offensive line this year. And I'm confident in them just being able to win games off the strength of being meaner than you.
At Missouri, at Oklahoma State, at Texas Tech, at Baylor at Texas versus Baylor. So they got some tough ones. They got to go at Kansas too for a rivalry game. That's a gauntlet of a schedule there that they're going to have to travel outside of the Little Apple and go to. So that, a lot of hype coming in. But depending on how these offensives look, that defense that they're going to have to replace, that could cause them some issues here. Let's move into TCU. Listen, what a great year under Sonny Dykes. And Sonny Dykes' first year there, coming over from SMU. I mean, I probably couldn't have dreamed up something better. I mean, losing the national championship, the way they lost.
Maybe losing by 40 would have been better.
True.
But they got there.
And they lost the Big 12, so they didn't get any hardware for it. But, I mean, I think that he had a lot to prove, going Cal, then to SMU, and getting back to a Power 5 level that TCU provides. But they're losing a ton, man. I just, they are losing a ton. 118th in returning production. Only 52% is back from last year's team, and that even drops lower on the offensive end. Tyson, they're 130th in returning production in the country. I think there's 136, 137 programs. It's crazy. And defensively, that's where they can maybe be kind of float as that offense, and Sonny Dykes gets it rolling again with 71% back. But Chandler Morris, he's going to be the quarterback. He was the backup last year. what can he do? I mean, Max Duggan was a nice surprise. He didn't come into the season as a starter. It was supposed to be Morris, and then Duggan took it over. So, Dykes likes Morris. We'll see if they can get that offense back to the next level.
And on top of that, they lose Kendra Miller. They lose Quentin Johnston. Like, if you were just casually watching TCU, you're not going to probably know anybody on the field. Obviously, Sonny Dykes hit the transfer portal pretty hard to restock the cupboards on offense. But if you haven't been paying attention to the career of Sonny Dykes and you're a TCU fan, welcome to the roller coaster. Because this is kind of how this thing goes. Like, we were laughing last offseason, like, this guy might, he's going to shock the world, do this. He's going to run 2 quarterback sets, so they're going to win 10 games. He didn't quite go that far, but they ended up winning a bunch of games. And now the flip side of that is he can also, I think TCU is going to be barely bowl eligible this season. That's kind of where I'm sitting with it. And I've been wrong on Sonny Dykes before, and I'm not afraid to be wrong again. I mean, outside of Josh Newton, the corner, like, this isn't a very talented group, at least on paper right now. Obviously, it's a bunch of new faces, so we'll see where they're at. But it's kind of one of those things where it was a perfect storm last season for them, and all those guys kind of hit their peaks at the same time. Obviously, Kendra Miller tearing his was it MCL or meniscus, something like that at the end of the season.
Meniscus, I believe. Yeah,
it really hurt the team. But like, Sonny Dykes inherited a TCU team with a first-round draft pick on it, a wide receiver, a third-round running back, a quarterback who got drafted who wasn't even supposed to be playing, and now it's like, now you're going to have to show us, really, can you play at this? Can you play with Texas? Because that was last year, that was the question, and they answered with a resounding yes. And this year, I'm not nearly as confident.
At Kansas State, at Texas Tech, hosting Texas, hosting Baylor, at Oklahoma. So you do get a little split there, but they also have to go to Houston and then go up to Iowa State, which is always a tough place to play. Yeah, it's a tough schedule, and I think we'll get into it more in Money Making Time here in a little bit. But man, this could go south pretty quickly. Let's move into Texas Tech, who there's a lot of hype around too, just based on what they did last year under first-year head coach Joey McGuire, who was at Baylor before. So he brought a level of toughness I think they haven't had at Texas Tech in a while. And it was nice to see. Like, they were nasty last year. They wanted to run through you. Tyler Show, their quarterback, is back. Now, he took over down the stretch late in the year, and that's when they started kind of piecing things together. But 8-5 in McGuire's first season. And with Show getting some experience in 7 games, throwing for 1,300 yards, just missed 60% completion percentage. I think as the number one, he'll get way more reps and get more comfortable. But they're 64th in returning production. Offensively, they're 31st with 75% back. But defensively, I think is going to be the concern here with 52% back from last year. And I think that's where this could really hurt this team as we head into 2023.
One of the things I struggle with on Texas Tech is, like, they won 4 in a row to end the season, which was awesome. But in one sentence, we're kind of crapping on Oklahoma, which was one of their wins. And then, like, we'll get to the SEC episode, but we're also going to be crapping on Ole Miss's performance last season, who they beat in the bowl game. So it's hard to, like, say this team is now ready to take the next step and make the Big 12 championship game while disparaging the teams they beat along the way. Because at one point they were 4-5, brother. And it's tough to reconcile with that. I mean, I think Tony Bradford Jr., defensive lineman, he's going to be pretty good for them this season. 41 sacks allowed.
Yeah, dude.
In the Big 12. If that doesn't get better, then good luck. Like, yeah. It's going to be really tough because they're going to score points. That's what this team did. That's what they do. I'm not worried about that. But we're talking about them beating Oklahoma like they donkeyed them. It was 51-48. We're talking like they killed Ole Miss. It was 42-25, which sounds really good on paper. Ole Miss should have scored 25 points in that football game. and so right. It makes it tough to kind of really gauge where they're at. And I understand there's tons of hype around Texas Tech right now, but it almost feels like somebody threw a dartboard at the Big 12 because TCU did it last year.
So they host Oregon as one of the big non-conference games of the year, which I'm excited for that one. They better have their defense ready or they're going to get shredded up, just straight up. At Baylor, hosting Kansas State and TCU, then got to go at Texas, then also have to go to Kansas. Again, if they don't have their defense ready, good luck. And then hosting UCF. So it's an interesting schedule, not the toughest. Like, they avoid Oklahoma, which is good for them, but you got to go to Texas And you got to play teams that are pretty aerial. That if it's not figured out, you're going to be in some trouble.
Yeah.
Let's move into the middle of the pack here, Tyson, because I think the staunch Oklahoma State fans or the staunch Mike Gundy fans, us putting them in here for this season, I think many people kind of raise an eyebrow at that. But you lose Spencer Sanders, you have questions at quarterback, and we talk about Baylor. You know, they've been a staple for a long time in the Big 12. They had a down year last year after a really good season in 2021. But going 6-7 last year and Dave Aranda's third year, it was like, oh man, maybe the shine's a little bit off them a little bit. Kansas, now this is a team that's people are pumped up about, and I'm pumped up too because I love them. Because people were calling me an idiot last year, Money Making Time, for picking them over, win total over. That was a no sweater, baby. Like it was great.
I think right away you were done.
I was done. Jalen Daniels is back. Lance Leopold is awesome, the head coach at Kansas. Like I'm surprised nobody scooped him up, but Kansas made a great commitment there. I think these are three programs going in different directions in a way. Like it feels like Oklahoma State, they're kind of petering down. Like is Kansas on the rise? Can they sustain that with a good young coach? And then Baylor, you're just kind of like, well, we don't really know what to expect.
I mean, we just talked about Texas Tech, and I mentioned them kind of being the dart throw for people. I think Kansas is my dart throw.
Okay.
Like the defense allowed 35 points a game. Sure, it was bad. The entire defensive line is gone. Is that really the worst thing in the world? The linebackers should be improved. The secondary should be improved. And again, like this is a team that might just mess around and score 50 points on everybody. A 6-win season at Kansas, like, is a build the statue thing, and we were all making the joke for Lance Leopold. But there's a real world where this, like, if things break right for this team, I think they're well beyond 6 wins. And we can kind of get into the other ones a little bit off after that. But I think, am I wrong to think that Kansas would be maybe a smarter dark horse pick? Like, were people really watching Kansas last year, or were we just surprised? Because that offense they got things moving.
Yeah, their offense was sick. For me, it's still the defense. Now they're going to return a ton. I think they were very inexperienced last year. Leopold wanted to get some guys in here. I think he has, and this is his second year now. And we'll talk about it like as a flyer, maybe in Money Making Time in a bit. But I'm excited for them again, though. I'm rooting for them, that's for sure. But what do you think of Baylor? Just real quick. I mean, we'll talk about them a little bit more as we analyze our win total. But like Blake Shapen's back. 18 touchdowns, 10 picks last year. Like it doesn't really blow you away. Like the defense, you would suspect it to be better. I mean, they also were super unlucky, which is making me look at Baylor like they could have a bounce back, but I just don't know about this offense.
I mean, it's a catch-22 deal because they lost 30 points a game last season, and it's like, was that unlucky, or maybe was it just like year one or year two or whatever of Dave Aranda when they didn't even allow 20 points a game? Because this guy's a genius. I mean, to me, I think he's the best, at least defensive mind in the Big 12. And I would maybe put an argument in for him to be at least a top 2 head coach in this conference. I really think he's a good coach. Dude, like, it's a brand new offensive line. It's like Richard Reese is kind of going to run the ball, which would be fine, but like they couldn't throw. They struggled really bad on offense, which also led to that defense being bad. So maybe it's not a one or the other situation, but it's tough to go, was it 12-2, something like that, to make
2021.
Yeah. To make the Big 12 championship game, and then to go 6-7, like to fluctuate that badly year over year. I mean, when they in 2021, like it was almost another one of those TCU situations where it was like, oh, this is lightning in a bottle here. Like this team is physical. They're punching everybody in the face. It's awesome. And last year it didn't seem like the same kind of energy around that program. So that's what makes me a little wary.
Let's get into the newcomers. I'm excited to talk about them because I have a proclamation for you here, Tyson. Now, this is what I've heard. This is what people who are very, very in tune with the recruiting are saying. So the newcomers, for those who don't know, BYU's coming in from being an independent for the last 12 seasons after they left the Mountain West. So they're rejoining a conference. And then you have Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF, who all left the AAC, the American Athletic Conference, coming over. I think for all 4 teams, this is a great move for them on the surface, just athletically for all their programs that they want to play and compete in. You're going to get more money. You're going to get TV deals and exposure. It's going to help with recruiting. It makes complete sense for Houston to do it. I think it makes complete sense for UCF to do it. This is my proclamation. With Texas and Oklahoma leaving, I think UCF is going to be the best recruiting team in this conference, because think about where they are in the country. Florida, they're now a Power 5 school and potentially even a Power 4 school. They have access to all those kids in the South, and it's a sick freaking campus, man. And the requirements to get in aren't very high. They take athletics super seriously, and I don't think Arizona State and Arizona are going to out-recruit them. I certainly don't think Utah will, because we know Whittingham has his own idea on what type of player he wants to get in, and UCF's just going to recruit at a high level, in my opinion. What do you think of that?
I think you missed a pretty big point there too in your favor. Gus Malzahn's already done this.
True.
He knows the high school coaches. He's got the contacts. So it's one thing to call and say, hey, man, I know this kid's got offers from Florida, Florida State, Clemson, and whoever else, but we want him to come play in the American. It's a different thing to call and say, hey, does he want to come play? There's only 4 conferences left. Does he want to play in one of those? Because we're going to be on TV every week. So I think that's a pretty huge thing in their favor. And on top of that, like, John Rice Plumlee might just mess around and throw for 1 billion yards this season. They could be electric and really fun to watch. I don't know how many games they're going to win. It could be a bunch. Like, that's the thing. I think they have 2 or 3 preseason Big 12 All-Americans on the defense alone, which is something that you're not expecting from a newcomer, especially UCF. No. But this offense is going to be sick. This defense might be better than people think. And it's like, okay, get some new starters in the trenches, things like this. Are we really worried about that necessarily in the Big 12 the same way you were when Gus Malzahn was at Auburn? No. And so I think that there's a sneaky world where UCF doesn't just like they could mess around and win 3 games, but they could be pushing, like, we could look up and say UCF won 9 games and then their first year in the Big 12.
I wouldn't be shocked at all. I think they're the most poised and able position to do it. I mean, just you have Malzahn, who's done it before, coached at this level. You have a team who is excited to move up. Like, that's the other thing too, is like sometimes the conference realignment and everything like that, you're like, oh man, I don't know if I want to be in this geographical location. Like, these kids want to play in the Big 12. Houston's losing a quarterback, so there's question marks there. Cincy is under a new head coach, Scott Satterfield, with the new quarterback. And then BYU just damn near fired their entire staff because of how, poor they were last year on the defensive side of the ball. And so Kalani Sitake, their coach, he's just like, yeah, I'm just going to fire everybody and we're going to get some new guys in here. So UCF's certainly out of the newcomers looking like they have the shiniest rose on them. And if they're going to get a head start on these guys early, ooh, boy, I think UCF might have planned this out pretty nice.
And they get a grace period, right? Because we're expecting, like, when you look at Cincinnati, it's almost like if they win 3 games this season with all the turnover and all the change and like Scott Satterfield and all this stuff, you're going to let them live for a season. Same thing with BYU. It's like it's Keaton Slovis, and like we've seen this movie 100 times with this kid. So are you really going to be shocked if they're not like lighting the world on fire? Houston is Houston, and I think like Houston actually was 12 and they won 12 games a couple of years ago, and they won 8 games last year. But we still don't really know what to expect, especially a team that just allowed 32 points a game in the American. Like, now you're coming over to where all we do is score points. It's going to take everybody else a minute to get their feet under them. And I think UCF is the best equipped to just kind of walk in and say, hey, like, if Texas stumbles or Oklahoma stumbles, it's going to be at the hands of UCF.
Let's get into money making time now, baby. I'm pumped about all this stuff because I think this maybe not for a conference championship. I think you can throw some flyers just in case. But let's pick our Big 12 champs here, Tyson. Like, I'm scared to do it, especially at this price. But I'm picking Texas for plus 100 here. I think they're the best team, top to bottom, on paper, talent wise. I actually think they have the best quarterback in this conference with Quinn Ewers.
They better, dude. They better. Well, this kid, if he's not good, then what is this like? He was as high rated as Trevor Lawrence was coming out of high school, but he doesn't get the. For some reason, it's like, yeah, but it's Quinn Ewers. He's fun. He's got a mullet. If this kid's not good, this is like and I know I'm getting worked up, but this is like a pretty catastrophic miss by every single recruiting service in the country.
He showed his talent. I'm not but what's his
58%.
ceiling, Yeah, that's the other thing. I think a lot of it had to do with his collarbone, because in the previous season, or his high school completions were nuts. Like his
arm
it was crazy. So we'll see. I mean, again, like you said, though, he's got a lot to prove this year. So I'm going to go Texas plus 100 as my Big 12 champions, although I hate that number.
I hate the number too, but I'm right there with you. And I'm right there with you, and I'm with Quinn Ewers at plus 1,200 to win the Heisman. I think is a good look, because Texas is a name, and Texas is a huge brand. And if there's a world this team goes undefeated in the regular season, and if that's the case, not only does he have a seat in New York at the end of the season, but it's like, are we really going to give it to Caleb Williams again when we already expected this to happen? I'm with Texas. I absolutely hate it. I almost puked saying it, but if they're not back now, this team isn't going to be probably in the playoffs until we expand to 24, because them and Oklahoma are both in for quite the wake-up call next year.
All right, let's go through it. Win total time. Baylor. Oh, this one was making me interesting, because I slammed their under last year for plus money, and that was a good play by me. I was so happy when they were so unlucky, but they're sitting at 7.5. Over is plus 152. Under is minus 188. They're telling you this team's going to win 7 games based on these odds here. Tyson, I don't know if I can see that. I'm so tempted to take the over here at plus money and just do a reversal on Baylor. I don't think Houston's going to be very good. I think there's question marks about Texas Tech. We have no clue what's going on with Iowa State. And then their non-con is Texas State, Utah early, with who knows what their quarterback situation going to be with Cam Rising's knee. And then Long Island. You got 3 potential wins, 2 guarantees. And so I'm sitting there, I'm looking, okay, they maybe lose to Texas, but they're hosting them. They got to go to the bounce house at UCF. That's going to be tough. They got to go at Kansas State, at TCU, but geez, man, TCU, are we that scared of them this year? To me, I'm looking at this thing. I can see 8 wins.
This is out of respect for Dave Aranda, this is a no bet for me. And one thing we didn't mention, this offense was horrible in the red zone. I think they were 9th in the Big 12. And so this might be a more week over week thing, because there's a world where they win 8 games, 9 games comfortably. But I don't know what I'm getting from Baylor this year on offense or on defense.
I think I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna take a flyer on Baylor over 7.5 at plus money. Talked myself into it.
You're gonna hate them twice as much as you did last year.
Well, I loved them last year. I loved everything they were doing. So Iowa State, now we wanted to talk about them. So they don't have an over-under out right now. And if you're not familiar, there's a gambling scandal that went on, most notably by their quarterback, Hunter Deckers. He's going to be out for the season as kind of the investigation, everything, and the fallout goes through it. So FanDuel has not released their win total or put it out yet, mainly because I don't think they know who's going to be their quarterback. So Rocco Becht was last year's backup. J.J. Cole is a highly rated freshman, one of the highest recruits that Matt Campbell's gotten in the program. So they're trying to figure that out. Now, offensively, 76% of their production is back on paper. Not anymore. Deckers is out. So I think there's just a lot of question marks up in the air regarding that.
Yeah, and also I figured that FanDuel would just throw down 12 wins as the over-under out of the respect that these people give Matt Campbell. But we're going to find out this year. We're going to find out.
That's for sure. Moving on to Kansas. They're at 6.5, over plus 118, under minus 144. Tyson, you doing anything with Rock Chalk?
So here's the deal. This was the most fun bet that we had last season by a mile. Maybe Texas A&M under was a little bit more fun for personal reasons. I'm taking Kansas over 6.5, Brad, and I have a little flyer here for you. In the conference exactas, one team to beat the other in the conference championship game. Texas to beat Kansas is plus 3,700, and I'm taking it.
Wow.
I'm gonna play that as well. And I understand at plus 3,700, I'm probably not going to see the money that I put on that thing back. I think there's a world where this offense is so good that it overcomes a lot of the things on defense. And I still think there were times last year where it looked like they were getting better in the middle of games. And that's not a Kansas thing, but it wasn't an Oklahoma thing. It wasn't an Oklahoma State thing last year. It was a Kansas State thing. It was a TCU thing, but those were pretty much the only 2 teams in the conference that looked like, they come out in the middle of the third quarter and Lance Leopold had this thing figured out, right? A backup quarterback is in there and they're fighting for their life. And then all of a sudden it's like, Oh, they just sent that tight end up the seam. He saw something. They fixed it. I'm more confident in Kansas to win over 6.5 games than any other bet in this conference. And I think that the upward trajectory that they're on right now can't be ignored. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But this is you as a bettor, you want to bet on teams that you want to watch and you want to cheer for. And Kansas checks both those boxes for me.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that the Kool-Aid is getting drank a little bit too much by everybody, not just us. Because I'm picking them too. And last year, it's out of respect. You know, they won me cash.
What was the number last year? 2.5.
It was 2.5. They won that. They won 3 games in a row. It was over. It was amazing. I was so pumped up. It was awesome. Talk about a no sweater. So they went 3-6 in conference last year. They finished with a 6-7 record. So you kind of change a couple things around. Now their schedule, they got to go at Texas. They host Oklahoma, host Kansas State. They got to go at Oklahoma State. Tough to win there. I mean, right now, are they not a better team? I think on paper, like Tyson, they're second in returning production. 85% of what they got on both offense and defense is back. That includes the most production returning on the offensive side of the ball, with 91% of what they did last year returning. Defensively, there was struggles, concerns. They got 80% back. That's 10th in the nation. And these aren't guys that are like kind of slapping around and like, these are young guys who Leopold wanted to bring in, who he recruited to play at this level. So you're giving me 6.5 a plus money. Like, is it gonna hit? It probably won't, if I'm being completely fair, just because that's the history of Kansas football. But damn it, we're gonna have some fun rooting on the Jayhawks.
If it hits, it moons. Like if they are at 7 wins halfway through the season, or 8-9 weeks into the season, like this is a team with so much juice that like they're gonna finish with 9. If they get this, if it hits, they're comfortably over this.
Kansas State, their win total 7.5, over juiced -180, under +146, almost an unbettable number right now. But are you going to play anything one side or the other for Kansas State?
No, you said it. For me, like it's too steep because I do believe they're going to be over 7.5. But I also believe that I can play that 8 times during the year at week over week and get more money out of it that way than I can right now. Unless you have massive unit sizes, I don't think this is really like the smartest play. Or I mean, if you're so sure of it, then and you think it's a lock, then maybe go play it. But for me, man, I'm playing spreads or whatever.
Yeah, I would say like if you want to bet it, it's probably going to hit just based on what they're telling you. Like they're saying they're going to win probably 8 games just based on the juice and how it goes. And like a guy who I listen to a lot in this space, who's a college football professional bettor, he says juice. He goes about 70 cents is worth a half win. So like the sports book's telling you, your standard VIG of -110. They're giving you 70 cents. They're like, yeah, they're going to win 8 games probably. So if you're comfortable to take it, Tyson aren't going to give it out. This is just, not a player we're interested in. So let's move to Oklahoma here at 9.5 is whose win total -104 juiced for the over and -118 for the under. So I were talking about it with the Kansas State thing. Vegas is telling you it's kind of a coin flip. Like they could win 9, they could win 10. We think there's probably going to be closer to 9. Oh man, I really want to bet against them, but God, Tyson, history just says Oklahoma's due for a bounce back.
I'm playing the under. Okay. I don't think this is a 10-win football team. I don't. They would have to improve thoroughly on everything that they were bad at last year, and that includes winning close games. And like we talk about all the time, there are certain skills that in college football, it's more coaches than anything else, and maybe programs. 0-5 in one-score games is really tough to look at and think, well, if they have 5 one-score games again this year, then they're going to win 3 or 4 just out of the laws of regression and everything like that. That's not how sports works. Like this was a team that either got trounced or seemed to shit down their leg when it mattered. Like when there was times for Oklahoma to get up for football games, they'd be up for 3 quarters, and then they were asleep. And that's not a program that I'm interested in looking at as a double-digit win, because double-digit wins to me wins this conference. Double-digit wins might be, with the state of college football this season, double-digit wins might be looking at a spot in the college football playoff. And I just don't think Oklahoma's there.
That's a good argument. I'm staying away from it. That's a good argument. I want to take the under, but again, I'm getting a little scared by it. I'm not going to lie. Just a lot of negativity there. Oklahoma State sitting at 6.5, over -115, under -105. We haven't seen a win total this low for Oklahoma State in years. And a lot of that has to do with what they've lost, man. 89th in returning production. That's with only 57% back, 65% from their offenses back, only 50% from their defenses back, which is 101st in the country. Your quarterback has been there forever. Spencer Sanders is gone. Seems like he's jumping ship, man. I mean, Alex Bowman, the guy's transferred twice from Texas Tech and then from Michigan, or Garrett Rangel, who was the backup. Like, it feels like this is an under. I don't know. Are you playing anything in this one?
No, and my reasoning is maybe a little bit more simplistic. Like, they hire I have it written down here somewhere. Sorry, Brian Nardo to run the defense, and they run a 3-3-5. And so to think that they're just going to transition in 1 year into a brand new defensive scheme that it's not like totally drastically different than what they've been running here. And the other part is Mike Gundy hasn't lost, he hasn't finished under 500 since 05. So again, maybe a little bit too much respect that I'm giving him here, because it's hard. It's not the NFL where you can just go out and pluck free agents that already fit these schemes. You're just hoping these kids that you recruit and that you take in from the transfer portal can play this style of football, and the ones you already have that are used to a different scheme. Now you're going to run a 3-3-5, man. That's going to be tough.
Yeah, I'm going to take under 6.5 here. I am scared because their non-con is super easy. Central Arkansas, South Alabama, which I don't know. Actually, maybe that's not that easy.
They missed Texas, Texas Tech, and TCU in conference, which is
they do.
It's kind of big.
You got to go to Iowa State. We'll see what's going on there. But, it's always a tough place to play up there, man. Like, it could be cold that you don't really know. And it's just a different environment than what they're used to. But here's the thing. They're hosting Kansas State and Kansas and Oklahoma. So they get the nice end of the stick there. They got to go at UCF. Those teams could light this defense up. And that's what I think, like, okay, yeah, they get a favorable draw hosting, but that doesn't matter if you can't stop anybody. So I'm going to take a shot on under 6.5 here. Like, feels like the warning signs are there when a guy who's been there forever is jumping ship and going to a place that he's not even guaranteed to start in Ole Miss. So that's eye-opening to me. I think you got to kind of follow the tea leaves a little bit. Let's move to TCU. There's a 7.5, over -144, under +118. You kind of alluded to it, Tyson. You playing anything here?
I'm playing the under. I don't want to do it, but like at this number, I'm getting plus money on them still being bowl eligible, right? Because if this was flipped, if Sonny Dykes showed up and won 7 games year 1 and then makes the national championship in year 2, alert is on, right? Like, my antennas go up. I'm like, okay, this whole thing is turned around. Whereas again, I'm more kind of a believer that, like, the stars were aligned last year and the conference was down, right? Like, the big dogs in the conference that seem to show up every year that we're predicting to be better this season were pretty shitty last season in Texas, Oklahoma. 7.5, man. And if you look at the schedule, you could talk yourself into 8 or 9. But I just, like, this is Sonny Dykes. And I can't overstate it enough. We love Sonny Dykes, but this is what he does.
Well, I'm with you, man. I'm taking a shot on under 7.5 here too. I think a lot of these lines, and if you followed us through ACC and Pac-12, there's about a conference every year that we think we can kind of pick some things off or the book's wrong. I think because of the new teams coming in, they don't really know how to price these. That's just my personal opinion. Now, I could be completely wrong here. As Cooler, we're trying to pick off some of this plus money that we think there's value on. We could get all of them wrong. Like, we don't know here. But I think if you're going to look at a chance for a regression candidate, I mean, majorly it's TCU. Like, they lose so much. And we're talking NFL guys. Like, it's not just, okay, good job, guys. See you at Hurts. They're going to the NFL. like, these are some players last year. So with that in mind, I'm going to take the under for plus money here as well. I'm joining you. Let's move to Texas. 9.5, over -140, under +114. I think this is one of the most interesting lines here. They're kind of saying they're going to win 10, but they know it's Texas. Like, they want to give out the under that much on the other side here. So anything that you're playing in regards to Texas win total?
So this is how I'll kind of handicap this. For the sake of the show, I think that Texas is going to win 10 games because I think Texas is going to win the Big 12. In real life, I hate the price that I got on Texas to win the conference so much that I almost don't really want to play them over 9.5 because now I have so much liability in this team that really is kind of one bad break away from things going really downhill. So, like, I think they're going to win 10 games. I don't want to play this because I'm already playing them to win the conference. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I think we're already bought in on Texas. Like,
Yeah.
we're getting okay. We think we're going to have to win 10 games this conference. You're giving me plus 100. Why am I double dipping and laying 140? No thanks.
Exactly.
And they could still win it with 9 games.
Exactly.
Like, if they're second, they get to the championship game and they win. Okay, perfect. But like, so no, I'm staying away. We already bought into Texas, baby, at a better number, plus 100. Let's go. Texas Tech, though. This is one of the most interesting teams for me. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you here. Over plus 118, under minus 144. There's a lot of smoke about this team, man. Are you playing anything to start just where you think they're going to finish? Like, I don't know. I'm just they're a conundrum for me right now.
Yeah, me as well. And I'm staying away from them as far as season longs go. In the NFL, well, one of the things that I think, at least, I don't know if this is true, but where there's smoke, there's fire in professional sports leagues. Like, if we're hearing all offseason, like, damn, the Lions have gotten so much better. It's probably right. In college football, it might just be a case of we had nobody on the team last year that could play like these guys are playing right now. And that doesn't necessarily always equate to an 8-win season. Like, 8-5 would be pretty good, I think, for the guys at Texas Tech. And like we keep talking about the non-con and how it's going to be tough to go there and play Texas Tech. They have to play those teams too. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where I'm drawing the line. And if I'm wrong on them kind of maybe being a 7-win football team, then I can still play them week over week. It just feels like I don't want to sweat this. That's really what it comes down to. I don't want to have to be sitting on my couch and my girlfriend asking me why I have the TV on at 10:30 at night and I'm watching Texas Tech play whoever.
They went 8-5 last year. I thought there was no way that team was winning 8 games.
Yeah,
and I
2 in a
took
row
the
would
under
be
last
impressive.
Year. I know I'm staying away from it. I mean, minus 144, it's not terrible. Like, I think that's right on the edge where, okay, it's a little juicy, but I'll play it. But I'm staying away from Texas Tech this season. Talk about juicy. I mean, West Virginia's at 5.5. Over, if you like them to actually have a bounce back, plus 148. The under is minus 188. I think West Virginia is going to be terrible. They won 5 games last year. I think this team's
They're worse. They're way worse.
Right? Like, what the hell is that? Like, Garrett Green, he's their backup last year, or Nico Marchiol, the redshirt freshman. Really? Like, these are the guys in this Big 12? I just don't see it at all. But I'm not laying minus 188. That's for sure.
No, and I think this is maybe the worst team in the Big 12. Like, I think Houston probably going to be better than them. I think BYU, honestly, could be better than them. I think the books are wrong here, and I think that's reflected in that number where they don't want to move it to 5. They don't want to move it to 4.5 because they could get hammered. So I'm going to play them to lose by double digits for the first couple weeks of the season, and I think that's going to yield more profit, even if I'm using 0.25 of a unit for them to lose by double digits versus like 5.5. You're hitting this bet. If you take this bet, you're going to hit it. It's the same thing with Kansas State, I think. But again, at minus 188, that's just – if you want to put together a conference parlay maybe or something like that, like this might be an okay leg.
They got to go at Penn State for the opener.
Yeah, tough. So, I mean, that's a 25-point – Drew Lar is going to dismantle these guys.
Let me see if I can pull up what the price is right now. But, I mean, their schedule is ridiculously hard. Like, UCF, Oklahoma, Texas, like, they're drawing everybody. It's tough, man. I mean, I think it's going to be – I think Neil Brown's going to get fired. And, like, we don't root for that on this show. But it's been tough. This is his 5th season there now, and it's gotten worse since he's taken over. I think we could be looking at a new head coach there at West Virginia. But, Tyson, let me see if I can find this. Okay. Penn State 20.5-point favorites at home. I think people, if you want something, go play that right now.
Yeah, because that number is going to smash.
Holy smokes. I didn't see that. That's going to have to be a play. So that's coming up September 2nd. My goodness. 3 touchdowns. Oof. All right, let's keep it moving here. BYU 4.5 over minus 188, under plus 152. Now, we talked about it a little bit for the newcomers BYU. They bring over like Keaton Slovis, and you said it, like we've seen this story before. We kind of know. He was good last year at Pitt, though, I will say. I mean,
Seems like
2,300,
everybody is.
2,400 yards. Yeah, fair. 58.4 completion percentage. So that's not great. But this is where I think he really ran into trouble. Only 10 touchdowns last year, 9 picks. And that's the Keaton Slovis, right? He throws for a ton of yards, and that's kind of it. I'm just wondering, like, is that going to translate to the Big 12? You would assume, just because it's more wide open than what the ACC was. But does BYU have the same type of guys that Pitt has had in these last few years? So that's my question mark. And I think especially with the new coordinators, I mean, if anything, I'm looking at the under to play here at plus 152, but I just can't do it. I'm staying away.
No, I'm leaning towards the under as well. And you mentioned the coordinators. Like Jay Hill was a pretty good coach at Weber State for the last 8 years or whatever. And he's also a disciple of Kyle Whittingham. So you think he's going to be able to come in and turn this defense around. It's a huge jump in league to go from the Big Sky Conference to the Big 12. Like that's massive. So to be able to come in and fix a defense that already sucked, right? Like 30 points a game. They allowed 175 rush yards a game. Those are tough looks. I mean, they're not making a bowl. They're starting out the season. They're going to lose to Arkansas right away. And I think we're going to know right off rip if this team is like fighting or scraping the bottom of the barrel in the conference, or like that's what's tough is because if this line was 5.5 and I'm smashing that under all day long, if it was 5, I'm comfortable playing the under, but this hook is scary.
Yeah, I completely agree. Cincinnati, they're at 5.5, over plus 138, under minus 170. And now Tyson and I have been talking about the juice here and just how we, don't really want to play these big numbers. I'm going to make an exception for this one. I just don't see any way in hell Cincinnati wins over 6 or wins 6 or more games.
You don't like Emory Jones?
No, man. And the problem, here's the other problem. When Fickle left, I mean, everybody left. Like, it was a max exodus, like 124th in returning production. They only get 46% back on both sides of the ball. Offensively, 42% back on offense, 121st. Defensively, 107th with 49% back. This is going to be a really bad team. And they got to go at Pitt, host Oklahoma and Baylor, at Oklahoma State, host UCF, host Kansas. Okay, nice little scheduling break there. If they suck, it doesn't matter. Like, they're going to get run out. Like, they're not going to have the athletes that these guys do. I think Cincinnati and West Virginia are going to be competing for who is the cellar dweller in the bottom floor mat of this conference.
Yeah, and it's one thing to allow, teams to score less than 20 points a game, but then when you get to the Big 12 and you can't score, it doesn't matter because they're going to struggle to score points, man. And it's an impossible job this year for Satterfield. Like I really think it is. Like, this is a situation you're walking into a buzzsaw, brother. Like, good luck. And I don't like Emory Jones either. And I think that there's a reason. It's tough when, if he had just transferred from Florida, then maybe you could talk yourself into him being like a good player. But he's on his third school now in 3 years, right? Florida, Arizona State, and now here.
Yep.
Maybe that just means that he's not good enough to start at the college level.
Are you taking anything, or are you staying away with the juice?
Can't do it.
Okay. Houston, 4.5, over minus 134, under plus 110. To me, this is interesting because I don't think Houston's going to be very good this year. They get Donovan Smith in from Texas Tech, who – he played 12 games. They went to a split with Tyler Show. They just don't have a lot back. I mean, Clayton Toone's, like, their receivers are going to be sick like they always are at Houston. Yeah. But Clayton Toone's gone. I'm just curious how that plays because he knew the offense like the back of his hand. And yes, like, they're 82nd returning production. They're 24th on offense with 77% back, even without some of their big guys who left to go to the NFL. But defensively, 43%. It's never been a team that focuses that much on defense. Now you go with where there's better athletes, and I think an offense with a new quarterback. To me, I would look at the under here, but 4.5 is just way too low that I'm going to play anything. So no play from me.
That's why I'm in lockstep with you here because I still think it's a talented team, and then you get Donovan Smith to come in and play quarterback, and he already knows the conference, but it's tough when a guy doesn't really play. He jumps ship. Like, he's not telling you I've seen this in real time. Like, he didn't have the bullets flying. He was watching on film for how a lot of these things work. If they made the Pinstripe Bowl or whatever, I wouldn't be like, whoa, I cannot believe Houston won 6 games. But if they win 2, I'm not going to be shocked either. And that's just too big of a variance for me.
Closing it out with UCF 6.5 on their win total, over -170, under +138. As you guys can probably pick up, I'm very bullish on UCF. I think they're going to have a great first year in the Big 12. I just don't know if I can play that -170. Like, that's the other thing. Like, I think they're going to be really good, but we haven't seen it. Whereas Cincinnati, they're having a lot against them. I'm comfortable laying the juice, not here at over 6.5. I'm going to stay away from this one.
So this is how weird of a number this is that the over for them to win 6.5 games is -170. For them to win 6+ on the alternate win total line is -360. They are telling you that they think that there's a better chance this team wins 8 games than there is that they win 6. And I think they're probably right. But again, I want every newcomer in the bounce house. I want the UCF money line, because they're gonna pick off a couple guys this year where people are confused. And I honestly think that that's part of the reason I'm not in Oklahoma is Gabriel's gonna have some shit for them, and I think they're gonna be ready for him too. And so it's gonna be a look, play the overs in UCF games. That's all I know.
Yeah, absolutely. I got to stay away from it. Sorry, Gus Malzahn. I can't do it, man.
Also, yeah, I don't like betting Gus. Personal.
That's going to do it for our Big 12 preview and picks episode. We appreciate you guys tuning in as always. These picks will be out on our social media pages, but you can find more of our stuff here at the Chalkboard, which Tyson will tell you about now.
Yeah, there's it's on the Chalkboard app. It's on the App Store, Google Play, wherever you download your apps. It's the Roundtable presents ISWIS bets. Or is it ISWIS presents Roundtable bets?
Yeah,
I think so. Yeah, my bad. Got it confused. But it's everything from golf to soccer. Obviously, football season is right around the corner, and that's where we like to make our money. And like, it's fun plays, it's real plays, it's whatever that you're getting into, it's parlays, anything you can think of, we're in there playing. It's not just Brad, myself. We got a bunch of other people in there just talking shit with us and throwing down your plays, because like, we'll tail fade, or if you ask opinions, we'll give them. But if you don't want them, that's fine too. Just tell us what you're playing. And football season is it's the best time to be playing with your buddies, because opinions in the NBA or opinions in soccer or any other professional sport, you can kind of be swayed one way or the other. Everybody is locked in when it comes to football season, because I'm right and you're wrong. And it's just fun to be able to bet with a community. It's totally free. We'll let you right in. And again, we're not big pat ourselves on the back, guys, but this was the most profitable year we had ever, was last year in college football. And we're just trying to give that out again.
Yeah, absolutely. And so stay connected with us on all our social media channels. In the meantime, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, it's all the same handle, at ISWIS_pod. And like Tyson said, if you want to join the Chalkboard, the link is in the bio as well. So just click that and you'll be joined on up. Like, subscribe, and share the show, whether you're watching on YouTube, listen in podcast form. We really appreciate the support. We'll be back next week. We got a ton more coming up. Like, we got to get to the Big Ten. We got to get to the SEC. We're going to give out some potential other stuff that we think may happen college football playoff wise. If there's Heisman stuff going on, we'll take a look at it. Just stay connected with us. We'll be back soon. Till then, guys, peace.